Hello kitties! Once again, it's Terrible Triple Feature Tuesday, and we find ourselves thick in the midst of Val Kilmer Month for, reasons. This week we're going to look at the bizarre relationship between Val Kilmer and Don Corleone. And when I say Don Corleone, I mean the head of the infamous crime family in all of the Godfather films. Val Kilmer has, in fact, starred in a movie with each and every Don Corleone that's ever been. Our menu includes The Island of Dr. Moreau, Heat, and 5 Days of War. In The Island of Dr. Moreau, Val Kilmer plays Montgomery, the scientist assistant to Marlon Brando's titular Dr. Moreau. Marlon Brando, of course, is famous for playing Don Vito Corleone in the first part of The Godfather by Francis Ford Coppola and Mario Puzo, or Puzo. Not sure on the pronunciation on that. Please, Italian Tumblr friends, yell at me if I'm mispronouncing it. The Island of Dr. Moreau is one of those movies that you can only classify as terrible. And as it turns out, a large majority of the reasons why it's terrible fall squarely on Val Kilmer's shoulders. Originally, Val was going to be the lead. This part eventually went to David Thewlis. I don't know if you remember, this was back in the mid-90s, so it wasn't an established fact that David Thewlis can't play good guys. So they were still kind of, giving it a shot, see if he could do it. Val was going to play the main character, but he was going through his divorce with Joanne Whaley. You remember Saoirse from Willow. And as a result, he didn't want to be on the set that much, so they swapped him out and made him the assistant to Dr. Moreau instead of the big hero. Which sort of explains why he's in, a smaller part, because this was still, pretty solid Val Kilmer fame years. Things only got worse from there. Val had all sorts of fights with the director and freakouts, eventually getting the director fired because he just didn't like him or anything that he was doing. And as a result, I can't think of anybody that had a good time on the set, mainly because of Val's little freakouts and fits. And it kind of shows. The movie's terrible. It's all over the place. It's boring for a movie that features, animals being turned into men. It plays out like a low-rent Lord of the Flies when, we'd already had, one, a pretty good Lord of the Flies movie, and two, an even better Island of Dr. Moreau back in the 70s with Michael York. Check it out. It's awesome. It freaked the shit out of me when I was younger. But Val muddled along, and he got to play opposite of Marlon Brando. So much so that he eventually developed a pretty good Marlon Brando impression, and he does it in the movie later in the film, which is pretty fun. I mean, don't get me wrong, Val Kilmer, complete asshole in the production of this movie, but he's still pretty fun, if only to watch him, sharing shrooms with mutant animals, which he does a lot in a skirt. Next we have Heat, and Heat is what we like to call a twofer, because Val is in there with not one, but two different Don Corleones. Val Kilmer plays Crucia Hairless, the part of Robert De Niro's big gang of highly proficient robbers. Robert De Niro plays the younger version of Vito Corleone in Godfather Part 2, the part previously played by Marlon Brando. Al Pacino is in there as the Detective Vincent Hanna, who is on their tail, and he, of course, plays Michael Corleone, who, through the course of Part 1, becomes Don Michael Corleone, and all throughout Part 2, and then through the better part of Part 3. This Val is just great. I mean, you look at him, and you don't really see Val Kilmer in it. You just see this guy who's part of this crew who is a gambling addict. Granted, probably a large part of that is due to the ridiculous wig Val is wearing throughout the whole thing. But he's just pretty awesome in the film. I love watching the bank robbery scene, and you'll notice it's Val that spots the cops first and just goes to town on them with a gun that my roommate would yell at me for not knowing. And he'll probably reblog this with, you know, the name of the gun, because I'm going to have to lose a man point for not knowing my guns at this particular moment in time. Anyway, so now, at this point, Val has starred with 3 different Don Corleones. Well, actually, 2 different Don Corleones. 3 different actors playing the Don Corleones. Which brings us to 5 Days of War, which is a Rennie Harlin film about the Russian-Georgian conflict that happened a bunch of years ago. I haven't seen this film. I don't think many people did. It's one of those movies that kind of stars everybody, including Andy Garcia, who played Vincent Corleone. Well, through most of the movies, Vincent something or other. He doesn't get his name until later in the film, and then he becomes Vincent Corleone, and as a result of making a deal with Michael Corleone to stop stooping his daughter / Vincent's first cousin, Sofia Coppola, he gets to be Don Corleone. Here's the thing, 99.99% of the time, I don't acknowledge the existence of Godfather Part 3, mainly because it's just awful. Godfather 3 is just terrible. But for my purposes, I'm going to be a complete hypocrite and say it exists, just so I can have Val Kilmer and Andy Garcia in a movie. I don't think they're in any scenes together. Andy Garcia appears to be a pretty serious higher-up official, whereas Val Kilmer, at this stage in his, I want to be Marlon Brando phase of his life, has gained enough weight that he's no longer really a young hero character in these films. He plays a photographer, basically the Dennis Hopper character from Apocalypse Now. Yeah. So Val Kilmer is one of the few people, I think, other than, people that have actually been in the Godfather movies, and then, even then, not everybody's been in a movie with all of the Michael Corleones. Or not Michael Corleones, all the Don Corleones, but Val Kilmer has, and he can just put that feather in his cap. He is hanging out with Marlon Brando in The Island of Dr. Moreau, Al Pacino and Robert De Niro in Heat, and then Andy Garcia in 5 Days of War. So that's some of the more esoteric, strange ones we've done in a while, but also a quickie. So watch those. I'll get back to you next week with a bit of a better one, I'm pretty sure. So watch those, and I'll see you guys next week.